Winter, 1943. The sound of wind howls over a frozen airfield in Europe. Snow drifts across the tarmac. A lone figure in a heavy gray coat raises binoculars toward the western horizon. He is a German intelligence officer, codenamed Hagen. 4 months he has been following whispers from the Atlantic, reports that defy logic, figures that make his superiors scoff. A factory in America, they say, has begun to build entire bombers. Not engines, not wings, not fuselages, but whole flying fortresses every hour. 63 minutes. To the German mind, trained in precision and hierarchy, such numbers feel like fantasy. But in the distance, across the ocean, the truth is taking shape in steel, sweat, and faith. The world in 1943 is split between the old and the new. In the smoke-choked heart of Europe, the Axis powers still believe war is won by generals, flags, and willpower. Factories run on obedience and fear. Each weapon carries the mark of a craftsman, a human hand, a slow ritual of control. But across the Atlantic, in the cornfields of Michigan, a new world is being born. Here, under the cold light of industrial sky lamps, machines hum like choirs. The Willow Run Plant stretches beyond the horizon, a mile long, half a mile wide, a city under one roof. And here, Henry Ford, the same man who once built the Model T, has reimagined the very act of creation. Where soldiers once marched, now conveyor belts glide. Where craftsmen once hammered, now rivet guns sing. Each B-24 Liberator bomber that leaves the line is a miracle of human organization. 1.5 million individual parts, 300,000 rivets, 55,000 separate engineering drawings, all synchronized in a ballet of mechanical precision. In the old world, this would take weeks. At Ford's plant, it takes 63 minutes. Germany's spies had come searching for a secret weapon. What they discovered was a secret system. The Luftwaffe still believed that victory belonged to the best pilots, the sharpest minds, the most advanced technology. But America's power was not a single machine, it was mass production itself. Factories had become battlefields. Workers had become soldiers. The sound of liberty was not the cry of an eagle, it was the rhythm of pistons and stamping presses, the heartbeat of democracy forged in steel. Here, night never truly falls. Floodlights keep the space bright as day. Tens of thousands of men and women, farmers, housewives, recent immigrants, move in coordinated rhythm. Some have never seen an airplane before. Yet, under Ford's system, they each perform one small task, perfectly, again and again. It is not art. It is not glory. It is efficiency. And efficiency in 1943 has become the new face of power. The irony of the age. The same industrial genius that once built the world's cars now builds its bombers. Henry Ford, who once vowed never to aid war, now fuels it with unmatched speed. There is an unease beneath the triumph. For every liberator that rolls out of Willow Run, there is a question that lingers in the conscience of mankind. When the machine surpasses the man, what happens to the soul of creation? Intelligence briefing in Berlin, early 1944. German engineers spread blueprints across a polished oak table. A colonel reads from a report smuggled from neutral Switzerland. The Americans have constructed a facility capable of producing one bomber every 63 minutes. Production expected to exceed 8,000 aircraft by year's end. The room falls silent. One officer laughs, the kind of laugh that hides fear. They have spent years perfecting their Messerschmitts and Focke-Wulfs, each one a masterpiece of craftsmanship. The idea that a democracy, chaotic, capitalist, undisciplined, could outbuild the Reich seems impossible. But numbers have begun to tell their own story. The sky over Europe is filling, not with a few elite aircraft but with thousands. And behind every bomber there is not one pilot, but an entire nation in motion. The tension of the modern age. This is not a tale of generals or battlefields. It is the story of how industry became the weapon. The same organizational discipline that once fueled empire has been reborn in freedom's image. The American home front, powered by mothers, machinists, and mechanics, has turned its factories into forges of survival. The assembly line has become the great equalizer of war. At its peak, the Willow Run Plant employs more than 40,000 workers. Day and night, 7 days a week, the line never stops. The final act of the process is almost ritualistic. Engines roar to life, propellers blur into silver halos, and the aircraft lift from the end of the line, into a sky heavy with purpose. Each one is a 56,000-pound promise, that freedom can be manufactured faster than tyranny can destroy it. Historical precision. By mid-1944, Ford's plant had delivered over 5,000 B-24 bombers. The Allied air fleets, once fragile, now stretched from Britain to Burma. The U.S. Army Air Forces could strike any target at any time, anywhere on the map. And somewhere in Berlin, those same spies, once confident in German superiority, now stare at production charts that make their empire look like an antique. But beneath the numbers lies something deeper. The story of Willow Run is not just about machinery. It is about transformation, the moment when an open society discovered that unity could outproduce dictatorship. Every rivet, every gear, every wing panel was a vote, a small declaration that free men and women working together could defeat those who sought to enslave them. The music rises, orchestral strings, then silence. From the skies over Germany to the factory floors of Detroit, one truth became undeniable. War was no longer a contest of courage alone. It was a contest of systems, of minds, resources, and willpower. And for the first time in history, the balance tipped toward democracy, not because it built the best machine but because it built enough of them. Closing line, thesis statement. In the end, the German spies discovered the most terrifying weapon of all was not hidden in a laboratory, it was the power of organized freedom. At Willow Run, America proved that in the age of machines, faith in ordinary people could build miracles every 63 minutes. The build-up, before the machines took flight. By the dawn of 1941, the world was on fire. Germany's blitzkrieg had crushed France in 46 days. The Luftwaffe ruled the European sky, its pilots legends, its planes feared symbols of unstoppable precision. The United States, though not yet in the war, watched the storm grow darker. American factories built cars, tractors, and washing machines, not weapons. The country's industrial power was immense but scattered. In the White House, President Franklin D. Roosevelt issued a quiet challenge that would become one of history's most audacious goals. We must be the great arsenal of democracy. But how could a nation of civilians, engineers, farmers, and shopkeepers build the machinery of global survival? The U.S. Army Air Corps had one request: the B-24 Liberator, a heavy bomber capable of crossing oceans and striking the Axis heartland. It was a marvel of design, long, sleek, and deadly, but also extraordinarily complex. 1.5 million individual parts, 313,000 fasteners, and more than 450,000 separate manufacturing operations. Traditional aircraft builders like Consolidated Aircraft in California could produce only one bomber a day at best. At that pace, victory was a fantasy. America didn't need one bomber a day. It needed one every hour. And there was only one man arrogant, or visionary, enough to attempt it. ACT-2, the industrial gamble. Ford takes flight. Henry Ford was 78 years old, stubborn, idealistic, and haunted by contradiction. He despised war, had even funded pacifist movements after World War I, yet believed America's destiny rested on production, not politics. When Washington asked for help, Ford answered with an idea no general could imagine. We'll build bombers the way we build cars. To the military establishment, the notion was absurd. Aircraft weren't cars. They demanded precision craftsmanship, skilled labor, and hand-fitted parts. Mass production, they said, would destroy quality. Ford disagreed. He had built the Model T, and in doing so, had redefined civilization. If he could standardize the automobile, he could standardize flight. In 1941, construction began on an empty tract of farmland west of Detroit. What rose there over the next 2 years would defy every expectation. The Willow Run Bomber Plant. A structure so massive it contained 3.5 million square feet of production space, the largest factory under one roof on Earth. It had its own police force, its own fire department, and even its own airport. Engineers designed a mile-long assembly line shaped like the letter L. A design so vast that Ford's own engineers had to invent new conveyor systems to move the aircraft through the line. At its far end, the doors opened onto a 1,600-acre airfield where test pilots would fly each finished bomber straight into the war. This was not a factory. It was a civilization. ACT-3, the turning point, the assembly line goes to war. By 1942, America had entered the war. The attack on Pearl Harbor shattered all illusions of isolation. Overnight, the nation's factories became fortresses. Willow Run came alive. Tens of thousands of workers poured in, men too old for combat, women too young for despair. They came from Kentucky farms, from Detroit slums, from small towns that had never seen an airplane. They came by train, by truck, even by foot. They wore denim, headscarves, and courage. And they learned, piece by piece, to build the most complex aircraft in history. The plant's workforce swelled to over 40,000, including thousands of women, Rosie the Riveters, who took up drills, rivet guns and hammers once considered men's work. For every hour of every day, the sound of production thundered through the valley, a symphony of industry that no army could silence. Ford's engineers applied car-making logic to war machines. Prefabricated sub-assemblies arrived on trucks in timed intervals. Each section of the bomber, nose, wings, fuselage, tail, moved independently down the line. Precision jigs ensured that even unskilled workers could fit parts perfectly. Quality control was constant. Errors were identified and corrected before the bomber moved forward. At first, the process stumbled. The complexity of the B-24 defied even Ford's experience. Production delays mounted. Rumors spread that the experiment was doomed. In early 1943, the plant produced only one bomber every week, far from its promise. Critics mocked Willow Run as, "Will it run?" But Ford's son, Edsel Ford, and production chief Charles Sorensen refused to surrender. They re-engineered the workflow, reorganized training, and brought in the best aviation minds from across the country. Then, the miracle began. By the summer of 1944, the line hit its stride. Every 63 minutes, one completed B-24 Liberator rolled out the hangar doors. A flying fortress of steel and aluminum, weighing 56,000 pounds, powered by 4 Pratt & Whitney engines, capable of carrying 8,000 pounds of bombs across 2,000 miles. The Ford dream had come alive, not as a car but as a weapon of freedom. The confrontation, when spies took notice. German military intelligence, the Abwehr, had intercepted coded Allied transmissions referring to the output of Plant X in the United States. Initial analysis dismissed it as propaganda. But as Allied bombing campaigns intensified, Luftwaffe pilots began reporting thousands of identical B-24s appearing over Europe, precise, uniform, unstoppable. One report reads, "They are built as if stamped from a single mold. We shoot one down, 10 take its place." Curiosity turned to disbelief. The Abwehr sent agents into neutral countries, Switzerland, Sweden, and Argentina, to gather information. What they found changed the German understanding of war. They discovered that America had harnessed something Germany had overlooked: decentralized innovation. German factories still relied on skilled specialists and rigid hierarchies, the craftsmanship of a medieval guild. American factories thrived on flexibility, teamwork, and mass participation. Where the Reich built mastery, the Americans built momentum. Every worker at Willow Run, from janitor to foreman, was part of a single synchronized mechanism. The enemy realized too late, the age of the artisan was over. The age of the assembly line had won. CTV, the human element. Stories from the line. Dear Charlie, I never thought I'd be building bombers. I used to pack groceries. Now I pack the sky. Every time I tighten a bolt, I think of you out there. Stay safe, and maybe one of these will be the one that brings you home. Letter from a Willow Run worker, 1943. They worked in 12-hour shifts. The air smelled of oil and paint thinner. Heat rose from the stamping presses like steam from a forge. For the women of Willow Run, it was more than a job, it was liberation. For the first time, they earned their own wages, held responsibility, and felt the pulse of history in their hands. One worker recalled, "When that bomber took off, I cried. I thought, maybe that's the one that ends it." For others, it was survival. Ford paid steady wages when the Depression had left scars on every street corner. Inside the factory, unity replaced identity. No one asked where you came from, only whether you could keep up. Outside, the town that grew around the plant, Ypsilanti Township, became a new kind of American frontier, half industrial, half spiritual. A place where faith, fatigue, and pride shared the same lunch pail. ICT-6, Consequences, the arsenal of democracy unleashed. By late 1944, the Allies had gained dominance in the air. Willow Run alone produced 8,685 bombers, while Ford's production network supplied engines, trucks, and parts to half a dozen other plants. The skies over Europe were now filled with the thunder of American engines. In daylight raids, waves of B-24s and B-17s flew in endless formation, their shadows darkening entire cities. Every 63 minutes, a new one took flight. The numbers were staggering. Over 276,000 aircraft built by the United States in total. Nearly 100,000 bombers. 50,000 engines per month. No empire in history had ever produced so much destructive power, or done it in the name of peace. In Berlin, the once proud Luftwaffe faltered. Their production could not keep pace. German aces fought bravely but faced a new kind of enemy, not a rival pilot but an assembly line. CT-7, Reflection, when machines became symbols. The music softens, the narrator's tone deepens. When the war ended in 1945, the Willow Run plant fell silent. Its runways emptied, its lights dimmed. But for those who had built bombers there, the silence was profound, as if a living thing had gone to sleep. The factory had proven that democracy could be industrialized without losing its soul. It had shown that ordinary people, given trust and tools, could achieve the impossible. German intelligence reports after the war described Willow Run not as a factory, but as a social weapon. They understood that it wasn't the machinery that had beaten them, it was the idea behind it. The belief that freedom could organize itself. Final image of the act, a B-24 bomber lifting off into a pale Michigan dawn. One every 63 minutes. It wasn't just a number. It was a heartbeat, the rhythm of a civilization that had learned how to turn faith into force and courage into production. 1945, a pale gray sky over Michigan. The war is over. The engines that once thundered across the Willow Run Valley have gone quiet. Dust gathers where propellers once turned, and the echo of hammers fades into memory. The plant that never slept now dreams. Its massive doors are locked. Its assembly lines, those arteries of democracy, stand still. Yet even in silence, Willow Run hums with ghosts. Ghosts of riveters and machinists, of laughter at midnight lunch breaks, of sweat falling on cold steel, of lives intertwined by purpose. For 4 years, it had been a city of motion, a human engine that never stopped breathing. Now it waits, a monument to the speed of belief, the meaning of power. In Berlin, the defeated leaf through captured reports, stunned not only by the numbers but by what those numbers represent. For all their science, their structure, their discipline, they could not comprehend this. That a free society, seemingly chaotic and divided, could outthink, outbuild, and outlast tyranny. The irony cuts deep. Germany had worshipped order, yet it was America's freedom that produced the ultimate order, the harmony of millions working toward one cause without command or coercion. The weapon that changed the war wasn't the B-24 itself. It was the method, the realization that when people are trusted, they organize themselves into something stronger than fear. At Willow Run, democracy became a machine, not of oppression but of creation. The legacy of the line. When the last bomber left the line, the workers of Willow Run turned their tools to tractors, refrigerators, and cars. The same hands that built engines of war now built the comforts of peace. The world entered a new age, the industrial peace of the American century. But beneath the progress, questions lingered. If humanity could build a bomber every hour, what else could it build, or destroy, in the same span of time? The lesson of Willow Run was both glorious and terrifying. It proved that human potential, once organized, has no limit. But it also warned that the line between creation and annihilation can be crossed in 63 minutes. The same systems that built B-24s would one day build intercontinental missiles, nuclear warheads, and computers. The machine had learned to think faster than its makers. The moral irony. Henry Ford never saw the full meaning of what he created. He believed in craftsmanship and independence, yet he built the architecture of interdependence. He sought peace, yet gave birth to a war machine that embodied efficiency itself. In 1947, 2 years after the war, Ford passed away at his estate in Dearborn. Outside his window, the hum of the modern age continued. Trucks, cars, airplanes, all descendants of the moving line he perfected. And somewhere, beyond his hearing, the world he helped shape was still learning what it meant to live inside his invention. Because Ford had not just changed how things were made. He had changed what it meant to make. Echoes of the Spies. Cut to a declassified German intelligence memo, 1946. The document reads in translation. America's victory was achieved not by genius, but by the organization of the average man. It is a new form of warfare, one that cannot be bombed, sabotaged, or deceived. That line, quiet, bureaucratic, almost reluctant, is perhaps the truest epitaph for the industrial century. For in the end, the spies had not discovered a secret weapon. They had discovered a new kind of civilization. Post-war transformation. The Willow Run plant did not die with the war. It evolved. In the decades that followed, its cavernous halls built automobiles, jet engines, even early computers. During the Cold War, it became a symbol again, not of bombs but of endurance. And when economic decline came to Michigan, and the plant finally shut its doors for good, its story did not fade. Today the site is home to a new mission, the Yankee Air Museum, where the memory of the workers and the machines lives on. The echoes of 1943 still drift through its hangars. You can stand where the B-24s once rolled out into the dawn and imagine the sound, the roar of democracy, the rhythm of 63 minutes. The human threat. They were not heroes in the traditional sense. They didn't wear uniforms or carry rifles. Yet their fingerprints shaped the wings that carried hope across oceans. They proved that war could be fought not only with courage but with coordination. Not only with sacrifice but with faith in the ordinary. One worker later said, "We didn't think of ourselves as soldiers. But we knew, if we stopped for 1 minute, someone out there might not make it home." That was the real miracle of Willow Run, not the bombers but the belief that every second mattered. Reflections on civilization. In the quiet decades that followed, historians came to see Willow Run as more than a factory. It was the prototype of a new world, one where production itself became the language of power. The industrial line that began there would evolve into digital systems, global supply chains, artificial intelligence, all modern descendants of Ford's principle: divide the task, unite the goal. And so the question remains. If the factory of 1943 could build a bomber every hour, what can the world of today build, or unbuild, in the same amount of time? That is the inheritance of Willow Run, the understanding that progress and peril share the same assembly line. Final sequence: the sky above Michigan. Somewhere above the clouds, a restored B-24 circles in the fading light. Its engines echo across the fields where its ancestors were born. The narrator's voice softens. Once, in a single factory, ordinary people built a miracle every 63 minutes. They didn't know they were making history. They only knew they had a job to do, and a world to save. The plane banks toward the sunset, silver wings glinting against gold light. Closing reflection. In the end, the story of Willow Run is not about industry or war. It is about what happens when human will finds rhythm, when millions move together not for conquest but for survival. The German spies came searching for a secret, a weapon, a formula, a machine. What they found instead was a truth that endures. The greatest invention of the modern age is not the machine, it is the people who learn to move as one. And in that unity, forged in steel and faith, America built not only bombers, but the belief that freedom itself could be assembled, piece by piece, every 63 minutes.